Hi, everyone, and welcome back to our series on facilitating enlightenment. If you want to see the first video in this series, there should be a link to it down below. Uh, just a recap of what enlightenment is. Enlightenment is really just a deep level, visceral realization of our connection to everything, of our uh, roots in consciousness, of the fact that we are consciousness just like everything else is also consciousness. Some people like to call it all that is. So, um, when we live in this world, when we live in our reality that we make up, we tend to drift away from this awareness, this connection. Uh, so, when I say made up reality, I'm not really trying to be negative about it. I'm not trying to be judgmental. It's just something that we do when we live. Uh, so, in this made up reality of ours, we have a sense of self that is separate from others and from everything else. We have a notion of space and time. We have a notion of events that happen over time, things that happen in space. We have good and bad. We think about evaluating everything. And overall, our ego is a projection of ourself. Uh, and the bigger our ego, the bigger our sense of self, right? Uh, so that's what makes up our reality. In the first video in the series, we looked at different ways in which we can reduce our ego so we can become more aware of our true self, right? Of our true connection to everything. So today we're going to do a deep dive into one of these ways, which is engaging in flow activities, right? So that's what we're going to do today. So what exactly are flow activities, right? So some examples that I've given out here, there's archery. So for example, if you have an archer who recognizes that he or she doesn't shoot the bow, but it shoots the bow, right? There's knitting, where you lose yourself in the mechanics of the needles and the fabric. There's dancing, whether you're dancing solo or you're dancing with a partner, and you lose yourself in the mechanics of the dance and just think about the next step and nothing else. There's listening to music, where you are in the notes. There's walking, where you are just the steps. There's breathing, where you are the breath. There's meditating. So essentially, in flow activities, we lose ourselves and we are only focused on the activity. We're focused on the next part of the activity, but other than that, there's no notion of space or time, right? We are aware of the mechanics of the activity, but we don't have any judgment on how well we are doing the activity. We don't have any desire of any outcome. We're not thinking of any reward or punishment. We're not thinking of how well we are doing the activity. We are just doing the activity. And over time, as we do this, any activity, it could be any activity, right? As long as we do it in a flow-based fashion, over time you start to see yourself because your ego drops. And just as a side effect, the way you do that activity is in a very pure fashion. So one thing that I thought about was, we do lose ourselves quite a bit in activities every day. We binge watch shows, we read books, we watch YouTube, for example. Are these legit flow activities? And I would say they are not legit flow activities because we are not dropping our made-up reality and seeing ourselves connected to everything else. We are simply trading our current reality for an alternate reality. We are escaping to an alternate reality for a short period of time. So let's try and analyze why. So if you are reading a book or if you are watching a show, we identify this alternate reality. We see it through the eyes of a different self, which may be the main character. If you're watching a YouTube video, you might be seeing reality through the eyes of the narrator. There is an ego there, which could be a combination of your ego and that of the character. we are very mindful of the outcome. We are very judgmental. There's often a sense of conflict. There's definitely a sense of right and wrong. So from that point of view, this is just another alternate reality that is similar in many ways to our made-up reality. It's still masking who we really are. It's not allowing us to see our connection to everything else. So I would say these are not legit flow activities. So what makes a legit flow activity? So what are the characteristics of a legit flow activity? So as we mentioned earlier, in legit flow activities, we lose our sense of self, which means we don't have any beliefs, we don't bring any beliefs to the table, and we don't have any emotions. We don't think of time and space, we don't think of good and bad, we are detached from any outcome. So if you're doing an activity, it could be any activity that has these characteristics, then it is a flow-based activity. So the other thing I thought about was, flow-based activities, do they have to be solo or can they also be done in teams? And all the examples we've given so far seem to be solo, right? However, there may be some team-based activities, but before getting into that, we need to be aware that working in teams, it's much harder to perform flow-based activities because you're thinking about the team, you're thinking about what's expected of you, you're thinking about outcomes, you're thinking about good and bad, you're thinking about not letting the team down. So there's all sorts of constraints on what you do that make it much harder to perform flow-based activities in a team. However, there could be flow-based activities. So some examples might be an orchestra or a sports team that is performing in the zone. Usually in these cases, the team has done the activity several times before. They're very well practiced in it. And so when they perform it, they can do it without any feelings of good and bad, without any thought of time and space, and just lose themselves in the activity. But in general, most flow-based activities will be done solo. However, we could do them in a group. We could do solo activities in a group, like group breathing or group tai chi or group meditation. And when we do that, these group-based activities, even though we are doing them solo, they might be beneficial in the sense they might raise our vibrations. I say that in quotes because many of us may not even know what that means. But in a sense, it makes it easier to see our true selves and lose ourselves in the activity if we see other people are also doing the same thing. So from that point of view, doing solo activities that are flow-based in a group might be beneficial. The next thing we can think about is the role of religion in facilitating flow-based activities. We often look down on rituals that different religions make their practitioners do, but you can think of them as flow-based. If it brings the practitioners of the rituals a sense of peace, where they can lose themselves in these rituals that they've done many times before, then from that point of view, they are flow-based. For example, in a mass or a puja, the activities are very structured and they're the same every time that you do that mass or that puja. Many New Age centers have chanting or songs. If you go to a mosque, you follow a set of rituals every time. So all of these rituals that are dictated by different religions, it's not that any of them are any better or worse than the other, but they could be flow-based, and from that point of view, they could allow the practitioners to lose themselves. In the dharmic religions, the central message that comes out is that do all your activities without any regard to the outcome, without any thought of reward. In fact, it is attachment to outcome that would lead to misery. If you think of the Abrahamic religions, which are Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, a central tenet in all of these religions is the submission to a higher power. And this notion that the meek people are the blessed. So what characterizes meek people? It's the ones who do their job, do their activities without feeding their ego. So we can think that when we are doing any activity, whether it's walking or breathing or cooking, if you're doing it without feeding our ego, then you are engaging in a flow activity. So to conclude, enlightenment is a deep level awareness of our connection to everything else, stripped of all our beliefs, thoughts, and emotions, stripped of our sense of self. Now, this awareness of this connection that we have to everything, it could happen spontaneously. If we facilitate it, if we make the conditions right, it could happen anytime. We could suddenly be very, very deeply aware of our connection to the plants and the birds and the leaves and other people and so on. And it may stay for a while and then it might go away, and then we come back to our current made-up reality and we continue to live in the illusion and play the game. The fact that we are alive means that we come out of consciousness. We would not be alive otherwise. So at a deeper level, we do know that we are connected to consciousness and we are connected to everything else. Whether we are constantly aware of it as we live this life in this reality is not terribly important. It's neither better nor worse to be aware of our connection to everything else. We should just be aware that we create all our experiences in this world through our beliefs that lead to actions and thoughts and that lead to emotions. And this is our made-up reality. And when we die, these experiences that made up a reality, well, it was all made up. They never really existed. And neither did we. If you guys like these videos, please don't forget to subscribe. Thank you.